Good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda Matthews, and I'm the head of marketing here at AdvisoCon. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Agile New Features in MS Project. Here at AdvisoCon, we are a group of authors, teachers, consultants, and technologists who are passionate about helping organizations learn, scale, and grow with a mix of methodology and technology to deliver results. No matter your size of your business, or our team specializes in maximizing your company and personal productivity by leveraging the Microsoft technology experience. Our education and training department offers a full range of training solutions for all skill levels. We also offer free bi-weekly webinars, which we refer to as Webinar Wednesdays. We spend 30 minutes to an hour each week teaching topics ranging from Microsoft Project, Project Server, Project Online, Power BI, Visio, SharePoint, to project program and portfolio management and methodology approaches. With attending any of our training sessions, we offer PDUs, as we're a registered education provider with the Project Management Institute. At the close of today's session, I will give some instructions on how to claim your PDUs and how to contact AdvisoCon for any questions you might have. Now, before we get started, I just need to go over a few things so you know how to participate in today's event. So if you could please review the control menu that should be on the top right of your screen. This control panel gives you the option to adjust the volume and adjust most of your other settings. The audience is muted during this session, so in order to ask questions, you'll need to submit text questions in the chat window or the question window of the control panel. And we encourage you to send questions at any time during the presentation. Tim and I will be monitoring those windows so we can answer your questions during the Q&A session during the call. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Tim Runcie, a Microsoft MVP for more than 15 consecutive years, and most importantly, AdvisoCon's president and owner. Tim is not only a wonderful owner and boss, he is a Microsoft project expert and one of the very best trainers in the industry. So without further ado, I will now hand it over to Tim so he can get this webinar started. Take it away, Tim.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amanda. Welcome, everyone, to our Webinar Wednesday. Again, this is a lot of fun for us to be putting this on for you. So no matter where you're calling in from, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, different countries, I hope this is going to be helpful. And again, just to encourage you that we will have a chat session there if you want to up on a few questions. I know we have kind of a short window for which we normally present, but I encourage everyone to reach out anytime with questions to our email address, or even check out our YouTube channel where we put a lot of this information out there for you guys to go back and replay it. So today, we're not just going to talk about the basics of Agile or the Agile features. We're going to dig a little bit deeper. I want to get into more of a deep dive of some of the latest release features for Project Professional for Office 365. Now, again, we talk about the licensing piece of Project, which is the desktop, or is the desktop coming from your Office 365, but they're typically one and the same. So typically, if you're buying the latest version of Project and you're connected to Project Professional for Office 365, you will start seeing these features appear. For those of you that have Project 2016 or you're connected, but maybe it hasn't released yet, it depends on the release cycle of what you have in your tenant. And so be watching. It'll actually just appear on your ribbon, and you have a lot of good opportunities to manage that. So as we get started today, we're going to talk a little bit about Agile, Kanban, and sprints. We'll get into a little of the overview of the tools and systems that are also available, which we'll have separate deep dive sessions on around some of the other technologies. But around Agile, there's a lot of good elements that we'll work through, and we're going to focus on what's inside of the Project Professional tool. So integrating Agile, Scrum, and Waterfall kind of in a single view, how to mix and match the two, and then we'll talk about some of the reporting features and also a little bit more about the database window and things that are going on there. Okay, so without further ado, let me switch over here to a little note that came out of Forrester. And I don't know if anybody has seen some of the Forrester reports on Project or Project Online, but they actually had one about Agile. And I thought this is a great quote because as people begin looking at the word Agile, it's kind of popping up everywhere. PMI actually has an Agile certification. So while you get your project management, you can also be getting your Agile certification as well. And so to think about this, to succeed in the digital age, digital business professionals must redefine how they deliver value to their customers and how they realign their people, processes, and technology for agility. And what's important about that is we think about the desktop of Microsoft Project, which has been pretty much waterfall for many, many years. You still have a relational database that allows you to pivot and use it like an agile tool with sprints, with story points, with customer need and prioritization. Well, Microsoft has enabled us some very powerful little drag and drop features that really speed up the process of working in an agile environment. So the overall idea from an agile perspective is that we want to quickly get to value, or perhaps take a project and begin organizing what needs to get done and when it gets scheduled based upon the highest need or the highest value. And again, those focus points, whether they're called sprints or you basically do time boxing, is that anytime you're doing iterative work, you're going to find that you're doing a form of an agile project. So whether you're doing design work like design, build, test, you might have a 30% design, a 60% design, a 90% design. The idea is that going through these little mini cycles or prototyping something allows you to make sure you are driving from plan to driven value in success. In some cases, instead of spending a lot of time saying, oh no, we have to go through all this rigorous heavy lifting, what we can do is use the technology and use the methodology to blend the two together. Now, of course, if you haven't seen some of the other conversations or webinars that we have, we've talked about the 3 tiers, about where we talk about task management, whereas the things that need to get done typically on a daily basis, like, go to the store and buy milk. I need to go and get donuts for our team meeting tomorrow because last time everyone was cranky. I didn't have coffee and donuts because we met, an hour earlier in the day. To key activities that may require work, it might have documents associated to that in what we call work management, which may be less than what we want to put into a Microsoft project schedule, which is tied to that project program and portfolio management, that demand and resource capacity. So as you increase the level of complexity on your horizontal axis here, and we also begin to increase the level of stakeholder involvement, or what we call that collaboration, the complexity and the level of collaboration starts dictating which type of tools that you may want to work with. Now, just to kind of seed some of the things that are out there, is that there's a lot more tools for the project managers than ever before. And Microsoft is not just saying, oh, we're going to build one tool to date. Microsoft product, very powerful, but you might be working in teams, or you might be using a Gantt chart in a SharePoint task list. A lot of people use tasks in OneNote, or they use tasks in Outlook. Of course, if you haven't seen Office 365 Planner or Microsoft To Do, these are new things that are emerging that allows your agile approach and project to be helpful. And of course, if you're working in a dynamic CRM environment, they have something called the Project Service Automation, PSA. Has some nice clean interfaces, but again, none of them meet the power of what Project Desktop has, and hence the idea is that maybe you don't need that much horsepower to make sure you've got your shopping list of tasks done, and so you might want to pick Planner or Microsoft to make that work. So with that in mind, as we look at what's happening and launching into project, whether you have it today or when you guys are going to upgrade, or if you're already on the 2016 project, you're going to see this kind of appear, is the ability to have these agile views in your environment. And of course, the core principles behind what we refer to as our agile planning process of Kanban is that literally we have this Japanese translation from Kanban of what we call sign, board, or visual signal. The idea is I want to organize things in a clear and easy pictorial manner. Again, Kanban coming out of the 1940s, where Toyota's production system was really helping to lay the foundation for lean manufacturing, is that there are key principles, is that saying, look, if we want to take a detailed waterfall or a Gantt chart, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to apply a Kanban view or to begin managing and organizing things that need to get done. So you might start with an existing process. What you know and what you don't know may emerge. You don't have to redo all of the way that you're doing your project to begin to improve some of these agile principles. And certainly in Microsoft Project, you won't have to redo your whole schedule if you want to begin to iteratively work with the agile environment. And of course, from the leadership perspective, is that both the roles and responsibilities are not limited. In fact, they might shift or change based upon the work and the ownership, but the idea is it encourages people to be actively involved. So as we about to jump into the latest features here, I always love to show things. And again, I've been working with projects since in the DOS days. And for those of you that had no idea that Microsoft Project was actually a DOS tool back in the day, here's the proof in the pudding. Pre-version 1.0, you can see DOS on the left, and basically you can see the launch screen of Project 1.0. As they moved into Windows 3.0 back in the early 1990s, we really took it into a graphical user interface. So projects come a long ways, and that's what we're going to be looking at today, is looking at some of those functional pieces in the technology. So let me bring open project and let's get us started right in a blended waterfall and agile schedule. And then I'm going to dig a little bit deeper on how some of these pieces work and what you can do to take advantage of that. So if you look at my schedule that I'm showing right now, you'll notice that I've got kind of a timeline view, which is really great to say, hey, I can pull pieces out, throw them into a timeline view, and this is what I might share with my stakeholders. I might want to move my milestones. Well, we've all seen timelines, and of course in Project 2013 or higher, you can certainly play around with your timeline. If you're in the 2010 view, you won't be able to build multiple timelines in a single view, but you'll see some of these things emerging. However, if I continue to work with my environment, let's just kind of scroll down a little bit here, is that I might be moving through a waterfall, planning, approval, I might be doing some high-level mapping, and then I might get into a series of what we refer to as development sprints. Now remember, a sprint is a great way to time box your technical teams to ensure that a period of time goes by that is a hard and fast date that we can make sure that work gets done and something of value is produced. But we still are looking at kind of that traditional project schedule where we've got this sheet, I've got tasks, and I've got activities. So one of the things you're going to find if you started a brand new project in the environment of project, you'll notice right here in the middle is I've got this Scrum project or Kanban, or perhaps I can choose this. Again, this is a new release feature that we're able to play around with. And as you pick that, whether you start with an existing schedule or you want to start from a brand new schedule, you can always go up to your project tab here and say, hey, I just would like to flip this over and move into more of a Kanban view. And so if I change this, I can literally see a new ribbon that's enabled that says, hey, when I come in here, I can move to something called a backlog board. And what I'm able to do is to say, hey, let's organize the things by functional area. What's in progress? What's done? What's next up? What are the deeper estimates? And I can literally drag and drop my Microsoft project tasks in and outside of what I need to have finished. So I've got this backlog of features that I can work with, and I can move these around talking about where they're at, including the ability to add new columns. So if I want to come up here and add a new column that says this is a deeper estimate, I might want to talk about priority. I want to make sure I have everybody thinking in terms of priority. And maybe I want to move this left. I really want to kind of start out with the unknown going, I've got a bunch of work activities. Yes, I've got kind of maybe a Gantt chart, but I want to just help my organization prioritize what we're doing. And then we'll figure out what we need more deeper estimates or what actually might be done. So literally, I'm just kind of moving these around, and I can drag and drop my features back and forth. And what's happening behind the scenes, if I double click on any one of these tasks, is I still have the relational database of Microsoft Project sitting there with all of that task information. But now we talk about new fields. Like for example, if I come in here and I say, hey, what are these new fields that we're working with? I can refer to things like maybe TFS, I have an iteration path. Or I might want to have some custom fields that I built, which we call risk ranking. But let me zoom this for you. But if you look closely right here, I can actually see what sprint it's associated to. I can look at information that might be appropriate for what is my priority, or perhaps as I'm getting into the backlog board, what is the essentially the value that I'm trying to manage to. So I can talk about areas and accessing my information very quickly and easily. And so the same data still sits here where I can come over, click, pick, and type the information that I'm working with. So again, from our perspective is that it's still a database, but we have this new interface that's allow us to work with this. And I'm going to dig a little bit deeper because there's some functional elements I think you might find very helpful as you work in your environment, as you work with some of the different key functional objects in our particular schedule. Now, as I move these around feature 8 and I grab feature 10 and saying, yep, that's going to need a deeper estimate, I'm really organizing and visualizing this. Of course, you could go into what we call the sheet view. And if you notice here, I can bring up a view that brings up what I want to work with. Now, if you notice closely here is that only things that show up in what we call board status appearing, right? Meaning that this view called the backlog sheet view, if I go and I take a look at this, and I want to edit this specifically, I'm actually looking at the ability to have a table and a filter that says, show me what's on my backlog, or show me what I'm specifically working on in an agile view. So for my view tab here, I would be able to come up and say I can sort, filter, or group by any of the columns that I put in here. Well, this view is designed to help you do that. Again, going back over to my Kanban ribbon, I can just say, show me everything, right? Here's where the sprints are, right? I can look at my board status. Notice here I can actually pick and click and say, well, that's feature 5 is next up. No, let's put that on the backlog. Well, if I'm over here, whether it's a sheet view or a board view, I can go back in, find my features, and decide what I want to work with and what I want to see. So again, looking at my backlog, going back to my backlog sheet, or picking the different views that we have, or we can actually manipulate the data that we're working with. Now, what I like about this is that I'm not just coming in and working with a nice visual view, is that I can filter out what I see here. But Kanban is only one way of looking at this. And let's take a look at another view. So if I go over to Project and I click on Agile, I can flip this over to what we refer to as a Scrum view. And believe it or not, you can actually mix and match between Scrum and Kanban. But I pop into my Scrum view, I've got a new view here. Notice I still have my Kanban layout here, where I'm kind of using that pictorial storyboard to organize the work or work activities, which a lot of people will do is they'll go into a room and they take Post-it notes and they kind of move things around by functional area. Well, now what I can do is I can come in and say, well, let's change this over to a sprint board. Maybe what I want to do is I want to see what is my planning activities and where those are actually going to happen. So as I look at my sprints, I can move, drag and drop these. And by the way, these fields are both local and they're enterprise fields. So if you're working with Project Online and you're going to publish this into an enterprise environment, we can actually go and drill into projects and organize them by sprint, by view, and having that information here in kind of the central portal. And that's the nice part about the license, is that when you purchase a Project Pro for Office 365, instead of saving it locally to your desktop, you can actually publish it into a single enterprise environment and also be able to leverage one resource pool to make that work. But today our focus is really more about the tactical pieces. So as I go in here and I look at all of the features, I notice I have this Agile column, and this is a key. If I take something and I take it from a no to a yes, I can actually make it appear in all of my Agile views. So again, if I sneak back over here and go, you know what, I really want to go back to that Gantt chart. My Gantt chart can show lots of information, but what if I come in here and say, let's not work with that. Let's go to the Agile table. And I've got story points and state, but I want to know if this is going to be on any of my Agile views. I can always right-click on my column header and insert this and add the Agile column. And right now, if I'm looking at my concept approval phase, while I might be able to see the top-level summary tasks, if I want to change my activities from no to yes here, I can very quickly say, hey, when I go into some of my Agile views here, go to my sprint planning board, I can actually see what I want to add. Or if I want to go back to my planning board sheet, I can actually add additional tasks here, and we'll start seeing them show up here in my backlog. They have no sprint, so what I can do is begin moving these around and saying, hey, we're going to create our user manuals, and our trainer session is going to be happening out here in sprint 6. I can go to any one of these and I can just simply type in a new task by clicking and saying, hey, let's go ahead and add really cool tasks to schedule. And when I hit enter, the same thing as if I was in a Microsoft project schedule. If I go back to my Gantt chart here, and I look at my views and I want to say, find that really cool thing, is that even in here? Well, I can apply a filter. And if I want to look, I can actually see what's available or what's not available. We can easily locate and find, let's find cool. We'll say it contains, and there it is. Right at the bottom of my schedule, I've added a new row. So whether you're working in an Agile sprint view or working in a Kanban view, you have some visualization and you have fields that allow you to sort, filter, and group that. Now what's nice about that, again, is you go back in and you can say, hey, we can do this in a sprint planning sheet. Show me my current sprint. This current sprint is looking at today's date. It's actually looking at my schedule going, what's going on based upon the size of how long our sprints are. So if I go to my Scrum tab here and I click on Manage, I can actually generate the sprints based upon a 2-week period of time. So as I go into my ribbon and say, hey, only showing my current sprint sheet or my current sprint board, what I'm looking at is only activities that are flagged as Agile that are falling directly in the time period. And so as I go back over here to my Gantt chart, let's just give you a peek here. It literally is looking at today's date here and saying, hey, what's actually falling within that window of time? So this is going to help you organize it with different views, dragging and dropping. And it also uses those metadata views that say, if I want to come in here and just say, let's just do a grouping based upon what I call burn down. Let's break things that are having no sprint. Let's look at the hours, or if I wanted to include the cost information. Again, I can sort, filter what's done, what's in progress. If I want to right click here and look at the story points, and maybe I want to also find out the budget, cost columns, all of this information rolls up. This is where you make project really come alive and leverage a relational database to present information, filter, and sort that. Now, what I like about our ability to manage this is that if you haven't been in it, let's say, for example, 2010 version of project, if you haven't been any higher than that, you're missing some of the new reports. And for 2013 and forward, you're going to see that we have a report tab where we can actually pick different types of views, saying, hey, here's my work overview. I can look at resources and cost. And we literally have this nice little pivot table that allows me to filter and group, picking different fields. And every one of these I click on, this is like a canvas. I can click, I can pick, and I can generate different type of views. Well, for those of you in 2016 or Project Pro for Office 365, be excited for a little bit more. You'll notice a new column here called Agile. And if I click on Agile, I can immediately flip over and say, hey, let's do an Agile task status. You actually have reports that are pre-built to help you know what are the status of everything that happens to be going on. And you can look at my overall tasks that I flag that say these are the work that needs to be done. Or, hey, let's take that Kanban board and let's take what we call that task board and break down the different activities. Deeper estimates, what's done, what's next in progress. Again, as I click on this, it says, oh, I'm looking to that Agile task view, and I'm using my board status column to actually help me create the grouping. So if I wanted to change this to say by sprint, I can actually see the breakout of tasks or activities I'm doing per sprint. All of this is right here for you to basically manage the information. Again, this is just one of your reports. And I love the ideas that I can take this data. I can certainly copy this. So if I go up to task and I click on copy and I fire up, let's just bring up an Excel document here. If I want to bring up a new Excel plan and I open up a window, I can take this data in, out, I can drop it into an email, and I also can still continue to apply chart labels, chart formatting. I still have the power of Office to manage this. And again, this is a data element coming from the Office format where I can come in and quickly pivot or format. You don't lose the functionality leaving Project to go to Word or Excel or Outlook. You have all of the same functionality that we had in Project still available here with the information that we ported out. So again, Project, if you haven't seen this, great with the Agile features. And let's take a look at a couple other reports. A lot of people are not even aware that these exist now. So if I go into my report tab, you'll notice I also have something called a work status. And so I can look at how many things are on the backlog. What is my board status? And if I start baselining and progressing my activities, I can also see who has work to do, right? I can actually see who's supposed to be doing what within the particular time period. Again, that's just one of the reports that we can work with. So again, let's look at that from a reporting perspective. Agile, let's look at a task status. Now we talk about our board status. Where are we at? How much is on the backlog? And as I begin progressing, where are things done or not done? So if I went to my Gantt chart and I actually started marking things, say 100% complete, just flag those real quickly, and I go over to my report, Agile, and I go in either to work status, I can start looking at work that is 100% done or not done, or again, go into my report view here and say, hey, give me a quick task status, what we have actually there. So again, the idea is that there's a great preset or pre-built reports that will help you. In fact, a lot of times it's nice to come in here and pick and choose, but you'll notice your ribbon changes when you pick the different project type. So for those of you that are going, hey, where do I get this? How do I find it? The first thing I would say is, are you in the latest version of Project, right? Are you in the 2016 version or a Project Pro for Office 365? If you are, and you go and you click on your Project tab and you don't see Agile, or if you click on that File tab and you click on New and you don't see these new features, then just wait. Within the next month, depending on your release cycle of what IT has set up for Office 365 for you, you will see those refresh updates appear. This is going to be bedded permanently going forward from Project. It's in the client. It's basically one of the tool pieces that's available when you get the latest version of Project. But it allows me to go back in and pick whether I'm working in a planning board, or if I want to move into more of a sprint view, or if I want to talk about Kanban. I have our ability to quickly manage and organize our functional activities, adding tasks, dragging and dropping. Very similar. In fact, you can see little percent completes here. So what we're going to find is similar functionality that will start appearing in other tools like Office 365 Planner, which are designed to also support it. But this information currently is really saying, hey, look, if you're doing project program, portfolio management, doing demand management and resource capacity planning, all of this information is still inside your database, and you're able to manage and modify your schedule. Again, using your features, using your tables, all the things that you've built here, you can play around with it. Now, a lot of people get excited and go, well, Tim, you're an MVP. You've worked with this for years. You've done that. I'm like, you know what? If you want this file that I'm demonstrating for you, just send me an email. I'm happy to share this with you for free. I really want to have people get in here and start taking a look at these custom fields or views and really helping to speed up your use of Project. I think I find it exciting when people go, oh, it's just one column. That's all I need to do. I'm like, yeah, that's it. But you're going to build views or filters or details or reports around that. So Amanda, let me kind of pop back out here. Maybe this would be a perfect time to ask for questions. So as we go here, let's see if there's anything else I need to kind of showcase. I think I've got the demo. That's good. Let's open this up for any questions. Are there any questions that we can answer for folks?
Sure, I have a question here that says, I do not have Agile tools, Scrum, design tabs, etc. on my version of MS Project. What version are you using?
That's just the question we talked about. And again, I think as people look at this, they go, hey, I don't have it. So two things. You've got to be on the latest release of Project. Now remember, what the Microsoft software firm is doing as they begin moving into what they call their evergreen environment, which is what they refer to as click to run. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint. A lot of these now, when people acquire their licensing, they're no longer just going and buying, running down to Best Buy or running down to Target or Fred Meyer's or Kroger's and picking up a box of software off the shelf anymore. What's happening is they're purchasing it directly from a cloud environment or through a licensing agreement, and that's what Office 365 has. So if you're on 2013, you're not going to see this project and Agile pieces. You got to be on 2016 or higher. And even if you have 2016, if you went and bought something off the shelf a couple months ago, it won't be part of that build. So you want to be using Project Pro for Office 365. And certainly going forward, I'm sure at some point in time, if they do continue to release what we call select licensing, or you want to run down to the local store and purchase that, you're going to see some of these things embedded. But what Microsoft's doing is making sure they're keeping their technology patched, current, and up to date. And so if you are on Office 365 and in your Office 365 environment, the release cycle hasn't updated your license, just wait, it will be coming. I know that there are what we call fast insiders. There's basically fast tracking, or you might have something that's just general release, which might be a month or anywhere to up to 6 months, where it may take a while to roll out that. But the first thing I would do is check, and then second, I would just check and make sure you're on that current version. That's an excellent question, because I think a lot of times people go, hey, I see these great things, but where's mine? So the file that I'm using right now, even though I have embedded fields that are part of the new database engine for Project, this file still has filters, views, and other elements that allows to come in here. So I've got this kind of embedded directly in the file. So even if you took this file and retyped the task and deleted the resources, you'd still have some of that formality. And again, I'm happy to share that with you. It's just when you want to pivot over, hop into either a Kanban view or go into kind of this board view where you can drag and drop and move things. That functionality is not going to appear in your version of Project. Excellent question. Other questions?
Well, Tim, it appears that we are out of time, but I'd like to inform everybody that we will email you directly if we didn't get to your question today.
Okay. Well, as you said, it sometimes takes a while to digest that. So let me do kind of a quick recap, and then we'll help you get to our pivot over to the PDU information. So first of all, the Microsoft To-Do Planner, there's a lot of new Agile tools that aren't just necessarily embedded in Project. Microsoft Project is going to connect to other tools, right? The ability to share information with Team Foundation Server, saying I don't have to build every task in a project schedule. I can pivot and push that out somewhere else and perhaps either pull it back in or at least view what's going on as part of that bigger Agile story. But embedded today in the latest release is the Kanban board and the sprint planning boards for to use categories, drag and drops, time boxing activities. And again, you can mix and match between a waterfall schedule or an agile schedule. Sometimes we call it Scrummerfall or Wagile. You'll hear all kinds of flavors of I sprint down the waterfall, whatever that may be. Project is flexible enough to manage that. And regardless of whether you're using Project or any other tool, you've got to understand that we're dealing with a database. Anytime you look at an Agile tool, we're talking about capturing data through an interface, storing it into the information that you can sort, filter, and view. And of course, Project has new reports that are basically pointed at this, so you have some charting and graphing to take advantage of. So I really encourage people to play around and utilize these as they have. So again, as Amanda mentioned, if you have questions, certainly I'm going to hand this over to her in just a second, but I always encourage people, if you have questions anytime, send me an email. As an evangelist for both technology and project program and portfolio management, I love sharing this. I love people to kind of catch the vision and find ways to save themselves lots of time. So Amanda, without further ado, let me hand this back to you, and thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Tim. And thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Agile New Features in Microsoft Project. We welcome your questions, suggestions, and your feedback. So for more information, you can contact Tim or our Director of Operations, Pam Greensky. And once you exit today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you complete and submit the survey in order to get your PDUs. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with your PDU information. So on behalf of Advisacon, Tim, and myself, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you participate in our future webinars, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.